Welcome to the Courageous Entrepreneur Show. This is the show that shares information and inspiration to help you break free from self-doubt, limiting beliefs, and disempowering patterns, and break through to create the thriving, successful business you dream of and deserve. I'm your host, Winnie Anderson. The show features interviews with entrepreneurs who've overcome amazing challenges to create success on their terms, and experts who share insight and practical information to help you move forward with courage, confidence, and clarity, so you, the introverted, mission-driven entrepreneur, consistently reach your biggest goals. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll share the show with others, and be sure to visit winnieanderson.com/rabbithole, all one word, to get the show notes and worksheet for this episode. If you're an entrepreneur, freelancer, solo professional who's also a former employee, the chances are very good that you've experienced some form of trauma on the job. Whether you've worked for abusive bosses or you've worked with difficult or even bullying peers, the chances are very good you've experienced some type of emotional trauma at work, and there's also a good chance that trauma scarred you in some way. In this episode, Tracey Maxfield recounts her experience with severe bullying and how she's using her experience to help children around the world. Tracey is a nurse with over 37 years experience. She's certified in gerontology and dementia care and is a regular guest on well-known author and radio host Peter Rosenberger's show, Hope For the Caregiver. That's on WLAC and iHeart Radio in Nashville, Tennessee. Tracey experienced her first bout of clinical depression in her 20s and lived with chronic depression ever since. However, nothing prepared her for the acute depressive episode she experienced in 2015. After enduring years of intense workplace stress and bullying, she plummeted into an abyss of darkness, helplessness, and despair, the likes of which she had never experienced before. Encouraged by a psychologist, Tracey started a blog, Escaping the Rabbit Hole, My Life with Depression, to better help her friends understand her depression. Over time, she began to heal and found that out of the darkness and despair, there is hope. There is life after depression. Since the release of the book that grew out of her blog, Tracey has become a staunch advocate for mental illness and mental health awareness and bullying. She's met with children, teenagers, and young adults to talk about bullying and mental illness, and was one of the breakout presenters at the Teach 2019 conference in Jacksonville, Florida. Her website, traceymaxfield.com, was recently awarded the Silver Medal for Best Author Website in 2019 at the ELIT Awards, and her book is a top 10 finalist in the nonfiction category at the Author Academy Awards. Tracey has appeared in over 60 podcasts in the U.S., Canada, New Zealand, and UK, and live radio shows, as well as on ABC, NBC, and Fox News. Her philosophy is to engage children and teenagers, to educate them about mental illness and bullying, and to empower them to develop confidence and skills to continue to move ahead in their own life journey. Born in Wales, UK, Tracey moved to Canada in 1987. Escaping the Rabbit Hole, My Journey Through Depression is her first book and has received international rave reviews. Remember, my guests and I aren't giving you specific business or personal advice. The information we're sharing is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you need help, be sure to seek out a trained professional, whether it's a financial advisor, tax professional, business building support, or physical or mental health care provider. If you feel triggered by anything in this episode, please get help right away. And if you're concerned you may harm yourself, call 911 or the emergency number in the country where you live. Listen in as Tracey shares what the rabbit hole is and how she got there, the reaction of her friends, family, and even healthcare providers as she struggled to recover, what finally helped her to begin to climb out of the hole, and how she's making her mess her mission, and how she's focusing on helping teens and children. As always, listen all the way to the end, where I'll share your cocktail exercise and action step for this episode. All right, Tracey, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for making time out of your schedule.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
Well, your message is so powerful. It's certainly one that I can relate to. I wanted to have you on the show just for me, if for nothing else. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive in here. And I want to start with really the ugly part of your journey. And it's with probably the most powerful part of it for me. And that was how you got into that rabbit hole in the first place. And it was through workplace bullying.
Yes.
Can you, and I mean, we could go on for weeks just about workplace bullying. So
yes.
You worked in healthcare, right? And I think
all my life.
I think that has a special reputation.
Yes, it does, unfortunately.
A bullying kind of environment. Yeah, unfortunately. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of experience that you have? I think some of us know that it's kind of legendary that doctors have this God complex, but can you talk a little bit about what you experienced at work?
Certainly. I mean, certainly, yes, doctors have God complex, but actually nurses can be the worst. Nurse to nurse, the bullying is actually epidemic. There's a saying, right? Nurses eat their young. And what I find so strange, and I think what was difficult for me to reconcile with, is we're all in this to provide care and support and to give our all to help people. And it's a caring profession. This is what we're renowned for. Right. And yet when we start bullying one another, to me, you've lost your true values of why you really wanted to be a nurse, because you should not allow your jealousies, your feelings of insecurity to, take it out on another person and to make them feel so pathetic and worthless just to make you feel better. And it's a shame, but it is rampant. I actually give a talk about it in England.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was more a peer-to-peer kind of bullying that you experienced than the typical doctor, being gruff and demanding.
It was a superior. So it was a nurse who was in a management position, so was above me on that tier system. But yes, the organization I worked for was quite renowned for having bullying for all levels throughout the organization and responding very poorly. And, whilst I was always very outspoken about this should not happen, then when it happened to me, I was even more outspoken, which actually proved to be my downfall. But yes, I had never experienced workplace bullying before, and I've been a nurse now for 36 years. And it began in 2011 when I started a new position, and it culminated on August 20th, 2015 at a meeting where the bullying took on a whole new genre, and I ended up falling down the rabbit hole. And yes, so began a very, very dark and difficult journey, part of my life that I have never, ever experienced before.
Yeah, there's so much there that is so rich for us to talk about. Unfortunately, I experienced some level of bullying almost from my first job. I mean, it was just, this is what happens at work. And yes,
I know.
Combination of peers, then there's the superior who of course has your economic life in their hands.
Absolutely.
So, and I think people of a certain age, women of a certain age, we were taught to be very respectful of the person who's above us. So we tolerate, I think, quite a bit. And then there's the whole enculturation of women in general, how tend to be, it's not you, it's me kind of people. Let's talk about what got triggered in you that led to your rolling down this rabbit hole? And I think that's a great analogy around depression, is this rolling down, getting sucked into this hole.
Yeah.
What do you think got triggered in you that sent you down this spiral of depression?
Well, so I do have a history of depression. I was diagnosed in my late 20s. And I've had 2 previous episodes, although certainly the episode that happened in the rabbit hole was very, very different. As nurses, we tend to give 110%. And,
angels, believe me, angels.
And I mean, burnout is very common. I think at the beginning, whilst I was very conscious of what was happening, at that time I was married. I had a default person to go home and kind of, complain to.
Right.
And there was that financial stability of 2 incomes. And I just thought, okay, somebody's going to notice. And of course, even if they did, they weren't doing anything. Throughout it all, so it was 4.5 years that this lasted, I went to 8 different levels of management. And nobody did a thing. In fact, I went to her superior to talk confidentially, and she invited her to the meeting. God. So much for confidentiality. Right. And so I couldn't say anything. Finally, one person that I went to, who was in a much higher position, basically said, "Can I talk off the record, Trace?" And I said, "Sure." And he goes, "I can tell you right now, if you're going to go to war against this person because of it, start looking for another job. You're not going to win." And so I already was aware. In the midst of all this happening, I was my ex and I weren't able to have children, so we had dogs. One of our dogs unexpectedly died, and so that was kind of almost like losing a child to me.
Yeah.
Then we separated. Then 6 months later, I moved out and began life again as a single woman. Then we divorced, and so I'm going through all this. So I did not, I think, have that sounding board to start with, because I would come home to an empty house. And so I'm going through all that. Also, the work I was doing was extremely stressful. It was not unusual to work almost 12-hour days, even though I was getting paid for 8.
Right.
And with the bullying, it would start via social media at like 6 o'clock in the morning. My job actually started at 7:45. It ended at 4, but the messages would continue until 10:30 at night. And it would be 7 days a week. I would go in on weekends. And I think part of it was my fault in that, because I was now divorced, I kind of threw myself into my work. I absolutely loved my job. I loved what I was doing. I was really good at it. And I know that bullies tend to pick on those that are actually doing a really good job, because they feel intimidated and they see it. There's jealousy and insecurity. Right. And it just escalated month after month after month, until I think what happened was in December of 2014, there was a very serious problem where she was trying to move a person who was a known sexual predator to a nursing home where there was 353 vulnerable ladies with dementia. And she had attempted to do it in secret, because I used to communicate with the person who was delegating the beds. And when it was told to me, very hush-hush, "Do you know this person is being moved to this nursing home?" I was absolutely outraged. And I went and spoke to her and I said, "I will not let it happen. You cannot knowingly send a sexual predator who is awaiting court date, who was charged by the police for sexual assault." And I said, "You can't do that. You were sending him into an environment where he could assault women constantly." And she was extremely angry. And at that point, I said, you know what? I'm going to be the first one to put my hand up and go to the lawyer and media when it comes out what he's done.
Yeah.
And I said, and she's like, you can't do that. And I said, just watch me. I said, you were knowingly sending a rapist into a nursing home to rape. It's right. I mean, period. The police had even told me that. And so I was successful in stopping the transfer, but I think that marked my death sentence.
Yeah.
Because from that point on, it was just, she came out all guns blazing. It just didn't stop.
Yeah.
I ended up having 2 bouts of pneumonia early 2015, never ever been ill before. In fact, had accumulated like 7-8 years of sick time. And I realized I was getting burnt out.
Yeah.
And
to say the least.
Right. And I think she realized it was getting to me. And I think that's when she started to go for the Achilles heel. She had a meeting. She called me into the office and said, don't come into work on Monday. I'm moving you to a different department outside of the hospital. You go in on project work. Wouldn't give me any explanation, wouldn't allow me to say goodbye to my team because I oversaw 23 nurses. And on Monday morning, I arrived at this building to be shown to an office with no windows, 4 walls and a door, nobody around. And when I went onto my email, I'd been cut off email. And so the exclusion began, the isolation.
Yeah.
And even though I challenged it and I won, she was determined that she was going to take me down. Yeah. And the takedown occurred on August 20th. It was a 1.5-hour meeting because she had been told I was to return to my position immediately. She had no grounds for moving me. And so began a barrage of, it was lies and false allegations and accusations. And even though we were able to respond to each one, it was just personal. It was so personal, and the insults, and it was like she literally had reached in and ripped out my heart and soul.
Yeah.
And even after the meeting, the 2 union representatives who were present said that was a witch hunt. They had never in all their years of working had ever heard and seen anything like that. And yeah, that was it.
It's so horrifying. And I wish I could say, I've never heard that happening before.
Oh, all the time.
All the time. All you have to do is change the industry and the job titles, to be honest with you. Just so horrible.
I 100% agree. Yes.
You start to question your own sanity, really. And as you're trying to do your job to the best of your ability, and everything that you were raised to believe is shown to be false, that good work gets rewarded, people recognize that you're a hard worker, a nice person, mean people get punished, right? It's like a total topsy-turvy kind of experience. And boy, there's so much there I can relate to. I worked in human resources, and this was going on. And I remember I started to experience, just like your health, your body, right? There's that book, Your Body Keeps Score. Your body starts to break down as it's trying to manage your physical state, all of your organs. It just goes, I can't take it anymore. I was in grad school. I started to get migraines, had never had them before. So I go to a headache doctor, and I'm sitting in the exam room, and the assistant shuts the door, and you know how there are posters out everywhere, right? So there was a poster on the door that was the signs of clinical depression. I had them all.
I bet. Yes.
And I had never thought, I mean, now that hindsight's 2020, I realize I was certainly depressed at an early age. I come from an abusive environment. I was I was depressed as a toddler. I was suicidal by the time I was 8. So, I mean, I've had this ongoing history, but to just be sitting there and going, oh my God, that's part of this. I'm depressed. It was just this giant wake-up call, and you've articulated what happens so well. You really try to fight the battle, right? Yes. Yeah. First, you're the bigger person, and you ignore it, right? And then you can't ignore it, and you try to choose this battle that you're going to fight, and that person is going to win. That person is going to win.
All the time, because if you have the top level of management who have no response to what's going on. But secondly, with bullies, what they routinely do, and especially female bullies, is they systematically pull people onto their side. And so all of a sudden, it's you against them. And I think that was also another challenge that I had to deal with, was the level of betrayal that I experienced by my team. And I know why, because ultimately they did not want to become the next victim.
Right.
And they and for their own reasons, they wanted to have favor with this person. But it's a shame, because what happens is, and it's the same with kids, you become a bystander, and a bystander is no different than the bully. You have to be the upstander who says, this is not acceptable, and I'm not going to allow it to happen.
Yeah.
And this is what people need to start doing is, when they see it going on, it's like, no. But yes, it is so widespread.
Yeah.
I am constantly amazed at how many people connect with me and say, I'm going through this. And it's not even just women. Men are bullied horrendously in the workplace as well, not only by fellow men, but also by women. And for them, it's a whole different ball game, because, if you're bullied by a woman, you're talking, right?
Stop it. So, okay. So, please. Yeah, this is just, again, we could go on for days about this.
Yeah.
I think a big part of the problem is that we believe that I've got this job and I'm not going to get another one, right? I'm invested maybe in a pension system, or I'm invested in the benefits, or I'm at a certain salary level, and if I left, I'd have to start all over again, or I'd have to take some kind of big cut, right? So there's all this loss.
It seems every single level, every single job, does not matter. The police force, renowned for bullying, fire, it's like, are you kidding me?
And so from a culture standpoint, because I worked in staffing, training, and organizational development, and so from a culture standpoint, I know how hard my company worked to create a positive work environment, but there were still these pockets of bullying that happened in every department, at every level. And in human resources, you're almost ashamed to admit that this is going on in your environment, because you're the culture people.
Well, and you're the go-to person if there is bullying.
Exactly. And I'm like, I got news for you, sister. I'm being bullied. Yeah, it was really, really awful. So then, so you have this horrifying moment, and did you quit, or did she push you out?
So I ended up going on sick leave, medical leave, which then translated into short-term disability, and the general consensus with my doctor and my psychologist was, you are never, ever returning to that environment ever again.
Yeah. You can.
I mean, the irony is I was victim number 8, and everyone before me had all left either on medical leave or had gone to different organizations, found different employment. And it was only on her 12th victim did they finally deal with her.
Yeah, you wonder, like, aren't you paying attention? To me, I used to get the turnover report. We used to look at these numbers, and even though we had an overall turnover percentage that was really low, you have these pockets and these stories, these people who become legendary in a bad way. When are you going to wake up that it's this person? Yeah, really disturbing. So,
Well,
yes, go ahead.
No, and what I was going to say is, but they knew all along.
Yeah,
they all knew. And it's like, to me, how can, in all good conscience, how can you actually continue to work?
Yeah.
Knowing what this person is doing. It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful.
It is. It really is a disgrace. And I think, we could just go on for decades about this, and because it shouldn't be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. And we're all trying to make a positive impact, no matter what job you're doing. You're trying to make a positive impact in the organization. And can't we just, be nice?
Get along.
Right.
Absolutely.
No. So, okay, you're depressed. You're out of work. How long were you in that hole?
I was in the hole actually for a couple of years. It was one.
Yes.
It was 1 year. So I fell down August 2015. I think it was around November 2016 where I finally started to see a chink of light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
And that's when therapy changed, and that's when I really had to focus my mindset. I'm the type of person that I'm very analytical, and so I think through, and you're trying to make sense. Why is this happening to me? Why,
Right.
why is this going on longer than my previous depression? Why is this worse than the other depressive episodes? And I would go in every week. It was weekly therapy for about a year. Then we went 2 weeks. Then it went monthly. And I would say, I can't keep doing this because it's the pain, right? It's the emotional, the physical pain, the suicide plans and everything. And I said, if this is my life, I can't keep doing this. And, can you just give me a day? Can you just tell me in 2 months, Tracey, you will be better? And he said, Tracey, I can't do that because your brain is smashed into like millions of pieces. And you're trying to glue all these pieces back together. And he said it could take a very long time. And I found that very frustrating because I needed kind of, you break an arm, 6 weeks, yay, use it again.
Yeah.
And finally he said, you've got to rethink this. You've got to start looking at this differently. And I always journaled. When bad stuff happens, when I'm stressed, I always journal. It allows my inner voice to try and problem solve. So I've been journaling. And he said, I think maybe let's look at it a different way. Let's start expressing gratitude instead. When you're journaling about your day, and, like I used to rate my depression like 0 to 10.
Okay.
10 would be the most amazing day. 0, well, I wouldn't be documenting it because I'd be dead, but 1 was like so close, suicide, etc. And he said, so when you're writing your day, why don't you find something to express gratitude for? And you're so dark in this hole that you're like, what am I grateful for?
Right.
And he said that you're breathing, that you got a bed, that you got hot water.
Yep.
And it started like that.
Yes.
And I would say after about a few weeks, of writing down, I have a roof over my head. I have hot and cold water, etc. I thought, well, this is silly. I can't keep putting this down every single time I'm expressing gratitude, and what is going to shift me. And I went out one day, and there was a purple crocus peeping through the remnants of the snow. And I remember looking at it and thinking, oh my goodness, A, spring, and B, what vibrant color, what a beautiful color.
Great.
And I started thinking, okay, rebirth, new birth. And all of a sudden, a little voice said, that's gratitude.
Right.
And I wrote it down in the journal. And then I thought, okay, this is gratitude. It's being in the moment and appreciating what I have today, and not thinking what's going to happen tomorrow, a year, a week, a month.
Great, yeah.
And that was kind of the defining moment because I'd been so focused on, am I going to get better next week? Will I be better tomorrow?
Right.
And it was looking at the world through a different lens.
Yeah.
And I think that was the pivotal moment, because that's when I truly started to appreciate that life is the simple things, right? It's not the materialistic and the ownership and possessions. It is, a child laughing, and you sit there and you smile at the wonderful innocence. And that was a good thing that happened to me today. That's my gratitude. And that was the moment that,
drop my,
I started to.
Excited. My earpiece fell out. So that's kind of, to me, that's kind of like the definition of mindfulness. Mm-hmm. You are even present enough to see that crocus and fully experience the vibrancy of the color, to plug in that spring is on the way, even though there's snow on the ground, that we're evolving.
Yes.
That's really, that's excellent. Tracey, do you think that your history, because you said that you're a child of abuse, you're an adult survivor of abuse yourself, do you think that history may have made you a ripe target for somebody, and to not fully, I don't know, be aware of self-protection maybe? Or do you see any kind of correlation between that?
I think definitely. I mean, from the work that I do now with the kids, we know that, right, adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, right, kind of define how your life is going to go and make you more susceptible to mental and physical illnesses. I think because of the abuse I went through, I became very much an advocate for myself. Then with the nursing, became an advocate for others. And so I would vehemently stick up for myself. I would defend myself. And I think against a bully, that doesn't work. Because the more you defend yourself, the more they get angry and are determined to pull things out of the dark closet to kind of throw at you. And so, yes, in hindsight, I think my childhood abuse and dealing with my family, and I think that need to be really, really good and to have people like me, because there was no love expressed in childhood. And then, as I said, it was all heart and soul related, because I took it personally, which then means that you start that self-examination of yourself. Well, you're not worthy. People don't like you. No one likes you. You are hopeless. You know, when all those negative words start percolating in the brain based on what I had gone through as a child. You know, why am I not good enough? Why can't they love me? Why are they saying these things?
It's like it validates that past experience, and I can see how you would slide down this hole. I mean, I've had to happen. It's like the world is crushing you.
Oh, it's so oppressive and claustrophobic. And as I said, I mean, it felt like I was in this small, dark hole. It felt, and people say, you describe it, it felt earthy. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't comfortable, it felt cold and damp and unnatural. And yes, it's, and I mean, I think with the therapy, it gave me that opportunity to start seeing the connections. And then building not a defense strategy, but more coping strategies to approach things differently.
Yeah. So when did you finally decide to write this book?
So in November 2016, as I was experiencing the gratitude, I had also said to my psychologist, I cannot believe what people are saying to me, because I would force myself to go out every day, and I would actually go to Starbucks for hours on end, working on a crossword to try and keep my brain busy, and that was a challenge in itself. But I would see people, and I was always honest. What's wrong with you? Well, I fell down a rabbit hole. What do you mean? I have major clinical depression. I had a massive breakdown. And people would come back with the weirdest comments, right? Oh, well, you don't go to church and pray hard enough. Or, well, you're out in public, so, you must have a mild version and things like that. And even when I'm trying to explain to my colleagues who are in the health industry what I was going through, everyone would say, but look at you look great.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Brit in me, make sure your hair's tidy, put on clean clothes, get out there, try and look your best, right? And I was saying to him, I just want to scream sometimes and say, take a look in my brain. If I could rip open my brain, right, and see what it's like, you'd understand. And he said, so why don't you start writing it? Why don't you tell them how you feel and put it in a blog? And so I ummed and ahed, and then I thought, you know what? Yes, they need to understand. So I started writing the blog, and immediately just the comments were, oh my goodness, I didn't realize it was that bad. I had no idea depression was like this. Even doctors who'd say, oh my goodness, Trace, like, I didn't realize depression was so physical as well, like the joint pain and the heaviness. And, I have a better understanding. And from the very first blog post, the comments were, you need to put this in a book. You need to put this in a book. And about 6 months later, I seriously started thinking about it. And I thought, okay, so if you decided to write a book, what is your reason for writing it?
Yes.
And my reason was because I thought I don't want anyone else to ever go through what I'm going through and think, A, they're the only one, B, that they're abnormal and that they will never recover. Because, as I said, I was a nurse and I still didn't understand that it was depression when it first happened, because it was so very different. And I thought, it would be heartbreaking to think that there are people out there thinking they're the only one, and that they're too ashamed or too scared to talk to someone or to get help. And then my second reason was, I thought, okay, so if someone reads it and their wife or husband or daughter is going through depression, maybe this will give them an understanding that they're not being difficult or lazy, right? That this is very real and this is what will help. And so that kind of motivated me. And then I happened upon a woman who was an editor and had written her own books. And I said, people keep telling me my story has to be, go into a book. If I let you take a look at my blog posts, do you think it's book worthy? And she was like, yeah, okay, send everything to me. And like a couple of hours later, she phoned me and said, I have you an editor. You need to write the book. And here we are.
Wow, that's powerful, and that's great. And you certainly articulated well other people's reactions. You know, it's so easy for when we're outside of someone to judge that person. And when we're going through what we're going through, and I have a traumatic brain injury and went through so many different therapists and therapies as in my recovery, and I heard the same thing: you look perfectly fine. What do you mean you can't do X, or that sort of thing? And that other person has this view of you that is indestructible, that you're indestructible. So they're not comfortable with what they see as your weakness. And then, it's this giant ball of emotion that is so challenging to then deal with them, and you're still dealing with you. And it's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
It is. And of course, I mean, right? Anything that's related to the brain, to mental health and illness, there's so much stigma still attached.
Absolutely.
And the old wives' tales and the misinformation that some people still cling on to, and that is what's frustrating, given that we know that depression is a global problem. I mean, the numbers of not only children and teenagers, but adults globally that have depression, and the amount of money it costs not only the health industry, but the workplace for lost days. I mean, it's a serious problem. And even, and they still really, shh, we won't go there. Put a smile on your face. You'll be fine. Turn that frown upside down, It's like...
You can look at it from a strictly mercenary profitability standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
Fix the problem and you'll make more money as an organization. But no, there's all of this stigma and people's discomfort in dealing with it and even having this conversation. And I know you'll believe this when I share it. I've actually, because I'm pretty upfront, I think, certainly about my brain injury, certainly about my childhood abuse, my recovery. I had a breakdown myself several years ago and have had my own issues with depression. I've had people tell me, you know what, you really need to stop talking about that.
Yes.
First of all, I don't think people want to hear it. And it's really not helping you.
No. This is the reality. Every single person who will be listening to this podcast, if they have not experienced a mental illness, they know someone who has or is living with it right now.
That's right.
Every single person, whether or not it's a friend, a neighbor, the lady at the grocery store, or a direct family member, every single person is touched by mental illness.
Yep.
And we've got to stop this. Oh, let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
Why? What damage are we going to do by talking about it? Because if we talk about it, we could actually save someone's life.
I agree. And I've actually had more people tell me that they appreciate my talking about it, that it has made them not feel so abnormal, that just knowing that someone else is experiencing or has experienced the same thing, there's this, all right, I'm normal, they got through it, I'm going to get through it, whatever way I'm going to deal with it. So I do think that we have to get comfortable talking about it. And admitting it doesn't mean that I can't do my job.
No, we must. And that's why, I mean, when the book was ready to be released and people were, are you scared? And I think there was like a brief period where I thought, oh my goodness, my entire life is going to be out there for people to read, right? It's the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I felt in order to share my story, I had to be very, very transparent and very brutally honest of how bad it can get. For people then to understand, okay, she knows what she's talking about. She's been there.
Right.
And there was that moment of fear because I thought, oh my goodness, what if I go to the grocery store and people are pointing out, her, right? Don't go near her. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? You have to do this, Tracey, because you want this to help other people. You've got to do this. And as I said, yes, I've had some very nasty, hurtful, mean messages. That's the world in general, right? You have those people out there that are hurting way more than you and are unwilling to accept help or to even acknowledge that something is going on, and so they prefer to put it back onto you, and it's like that's the way it is, right?
So let's talk about now the book is out. I know you're speaking. How has this shaped the mission that you're on now and the work that you do? How are you using, because really you're using this as a great mechanism to impact the world, really?
Well, thank you. So, I mean, when the book was first released, I thought, oh, okay, yes, I'll be going out there and, I can talk about it and help others understand, mental illness and depression and what they can do. And it was about 3 weeks later when I was invited to actually go and talk to some kids, 15-year-old teenagers at a local school, that my perspective changed. I mean, we hear all the time, right? Another teenager's died by suicide and, depression. And they always, mention it on social media or the news. And all of a sudden, I have all these kids in this class and they're asking me questions. And I thought, wow, they're really interested and they want to know more. And then I returned 2 weeks later for an all-day human library, which is kind of like their version of Career Day. And it was an 8-hour day, and all the kids, so it was like ages 11 to 15, had to sign up for 30-minute sessions sitting at everyone's table to talk about their career. And they asked me to return as a first-time author, how to write and publish a book. And so I sat down at 8:30, and the first group came, and it's like 8, 9 teenagers. And I start talking, and, they're looking at one another. And I said, did you sign, you signed up for my table, right? And they're like, yeah. And I said, you seem confused. Can I ask you, why did you come and sit at my table? And they said, we've heard about you. You're the lady that escaped the rabbit hole. We want you to tell us how. How did you do it? And so began an endless, rotation of teenagers every 30 minutes for 8 hours coming to talk about what they were going through, bullying, mental illness, either if they had it or a friend or a family member. And then there were even more waiting at the end of each session to come and talk to me privately.
Wow.
And as I said, the two resonated the most. A 15-year-old girl who whispered in my ear, I just came home from hospital after my second suicide attempt, and lifted her sleeves and showed me all the cutting she had done. And the second one was a 13-year-old boy. It was the end of the day. Very, very quiet, didn't participate much in the talk. And I thought, something's not right here. And he came up after, very embarrassed and stammering, asked me if he could talk to me. And I said, yes. Well, how can I help you? And he literally fell into my shoulder, sobbing his heart out. He's 13 years old. And he said, I've been in the rabbit hole for seven years. When will I get out? And so I spent 20 minutes talking with him. And at the end of the day, the school counselor came to me and reprimanded me. I was actually bullied by the school counselor. And she said, you were here to give a talk. You weren't here to sit and talk with the kids and counsel them.
Yeah.
And I said, he was in pain. He needed to talk. I listened and I helped him. And she looked at me and she goes, he's got so many problems, he's never going to get better. And at that point, that was it.
Yeah.
I thought, are you kidding me? I said a few choice words to her, which I won't repeat. But I drove home and I was crying and crying. And I thought, like, I had 63 teenagers come to me that day and tell me what they were going through. 63. And I thought, oh, it's just that school. And then I did research and thought, oh my goodness, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And it was then a doctor friend said, have you thought, Trace, this is what you're really supposed to be doing now the book is released. You are going to be the voice for these kids. And it made sense. And I thought, you know what? Yes. After what I went through and how I felt and I struggled, how are we expecting our kids to navigate this system and work it out for themselves, especially if their parents and teachers don't understand? And so that kind of began the mission.
Okay.
Or like, so I refer to myself I'm on a new life journey. So yes, I've escaped the rabbit hole. I call myself I'm on extended parole because the depression doesn't go, right? You still have bad days, very bad days, and certain things can trigger. But I've learned to accept them. It's okay not to be okay, I call it. And just say, okay, you've been through this. You know you can get through it again. Yeah. Just kind of chill per se. And that kind of led me to the decision to sell my home. And I thought, you know what? I really want to get this message out. It's very important to me. And so I sold my home and I gave away most of my possessions. And I thought, I'm just going to go and travel in, the States. And then I went to the UK and I'm going to go and talk about bullying, suicide, mental illness in children and teenagers and what we need to do, because we're going to lose an entire generation if we're not careful. I mean, there's so much going on in these kids' lives. We're expecting them to be adults, and yet no one has ever shown them how they're supposed to act like an adult, and they're still essentially kids whose brains are not even fully developed until their 20s. Yeah. And so that is how it began. And from there, I then got hired a marketing team, which led to the YouTube videos and the blog, the blog posts. And I'm just trying to raise awareness, end the stigma, and correct any misinformation and get people to start, understanding that, we all have mental health. It's a good thing. We need our brains, right?
Yep.
And and when something goes array in our brains, then we get help and we support each other and we work through it. I say mental illness does not define us. It is a part of me, but I have 5 other lines I would say first, and then I would say I have depression. Mm-hmm. And I think people need to stop, as you said, basing everything on, her, that's Winnie with a traumatic brain injury. No, it's not. It's Winnie who has, a wonderful spirit and a beautiful smile and is helping people and has podcasts, and she has 4 cats, 2 of which band up against each other. And, oh, by the way, did you hear? Yeah, a couple of years ago, she had a nervous breakdown and a traumatic brain injury. But, look what wonderful thing she's doing. That's how it should be. Not, that's Winnie, yeah, with the traumatic. Right? And we have to change how we word things, because at our core, there's so much more.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. So your mission now is to get this message out. Do you speak? What else what's next for you, I guess, is the root of the question. How else are you going to be working with people? What do you see as where this is going to go for you?
Well, I hope ultimately it will result in more like workshops and speaking engagements where you can, engage with the kids on a level that they understand. Because as you know, I mean, kids, trust is a huge issue, and lots of them don't like talking to therapists or other people if they have not walked a mile in their shoes.
Right.
Right? You have to know what they're going through. And so I certainly have developed a trust bond with kids because, quote, I'm the lady from the rabbit hole. But yes, so I mean, my philosophy or my mantra is engage, educate, empower, right? So we have to engage the kids in order to educate them, and educating and supporting them will lead to empowering them to move on in life stronger and more confident, knowing that, okay, I have bipolar disorder or I have an anxiety disorder. It's not going to take over my life. I can still be the high school jock. I can still go to university. I can still get a job, get married, have 5 dogs, whatever, right? Because kids don't have hope anymore. They see no future. They don't have hope or optimism. And so that's what I'm hoping to kind of instill in them. I'm actually in the final stages of completing my own online course, which is solely about mental illness in children and teenagers. And it's to help them, but also it's strategies and information to help healthcare professionals, parents, family members, anyone get a better understanding of what they're going through and what you can do to help them. So that's next on the agenda. And then I'm 3 weeks time. So I came home from the UK on Saturday. I'm here for 3 weeks and then I'm back down to the States and then up to Toronto. And again, it's media, right? So it's TV and book signings and radio. And every week is my YouTube video and my accompanying blog post. And it's just, the repetition of you keep talking and keep talking and keep talking. And along the way, you hope that there's someone listening and you've made that difference that day to help them.
Right.
And, I'm hoping that each speaking engagement gets bigger. It attracts more people because then that means that people want to know that it is something important and they want to start helping each other and their children. And ultimately, that's what I would like to see. It's, as I said, I would say when I first started, I considered myself on the bottom rung of the ladder. I'm now on the middle rung. To get to the top rung, it's going to take a little bit more work. And it's just being out there all the time. Like it's that presence of mental illness and even bullying is 365 days a year. It does not take a holiday. Mm-mm. It happens all the time. And so we need to talk about it all the time. It's great that we have Suicide Prevention Awareness Week. And it's great that we have November is Stop Bullying Month. But when that month passes, we need to continue to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of, I call myself, I have a big mouth. I talk. So I'll say what the kids won't say.
That's outstanding. Tracy, we could go on for hours about this, days, weeks even. This is such a gigantic topic. It's been so much chatting with you. Where can people go to learn more? And is it that to book you to speak? Where can they go to find out more about you?
So the easiest thing is to actually go to my website, www.traceymaxfield.com, because then it has all the links to my social media, email, and even if they just Google me, all my YouTube videos come up. Yeah. There's so many links. And so, yes. And if they can't remember my name, just put rabbit hole. I come up then.
There's your keyword phrase right there. And of course, we'll have all those links on the site with the show notes, so you can reach out to Tracey right through the show notes as well. Thank you so much for sharing so much. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A pleasure.
I hope you found that as powerful to listen to as it was to experience with Tracey. If you found this useful, please share this episode with your connections. Please leave a great review for it on the platform where you consumed it. You can become a fan of the show and access back episodes and resources by going to couragepodcastfan.com and subscribing to The Vault. It's free, of course, and includes back episodes from every season, along with bonus content and resources all in one place. You'll get an email when a new episode is added, and you'll also receive information, tips, and strategies to help you achieve your biggest business goals. All right, so your cocktail exercise, otherwise known as a reflection exercise. No alcohol needs to be involved. Don't overindulge, and don't drink and drive. Your reflection exercise is to really think about your own experiences with bullying, with harassment, and abusive people in the workplace. Think back to the peers you worked with and the bosses you worked for. What did they do to you, and how could those experiences be impacting you today? What story did you tell yourself then, and what story do you tell yourself now that could be tied to those awful experiences, and how could that unresolved trauma still be impacting you and holding you back? And your action step. Identify where you want to go with your business and life. What big goals do you have? Next, look at where you are right now and think about what's keeping you from taking action to achieve your biggest goals. Do you resist getting your message out there? Are you afraid to have marketing conversations for fear of rejection? Do you spend all day focused on tasks that really don't move the needle forward on your business? If you believe the negative experiences of your past life are impacting you and holding you back in this new one you're creating, please get help. No amount of positive thinking and hard work is going to get you past the issue unless you face it, recognize it, and put it to rest. If you need help, you can reach out to your local mental health provider. You can also visit winnierecommends.com, which takes you to my resources page. There's sure to be someone there who can help you or direct you to help. If you found value in this episode, please share it with others. And remember, you can become a fan of the show and get access to The Vault, which has all the back episodes in both audio and video format, plus bonus material. You can find that at couragepodcastfan.com. In addition to the episodes, you'll get information, tips, and resources to help you come out of hiding, get your message out in a more powerful way, and achieve your business goals so you can profit from your expertise. And if you're an introverted solo professional or someone with introverted leanings and you'd like to hang out with an online community of like-minded and like-personality professionals, then head over to winnieanderson.com/join the group and join my Courageous Success community on Facebook. It's for introverted, mission-driven entrepreneurs, and it's where I share tips and strategies to help you achieve the success you dream of and deserve in alignment with your beliefs, values, and personality. Thanks for listening, and remember, you deserve all the success you dream of.